So today I'm here with Eli Wild, 100 million in sales, over 3,300 previews, and one of the best I've seen when it comes to sales training. Eli, thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks so much, buddy.
You know, we've spent quite a lot of time together over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I've been following you around.
And, I've got to say, this guy has some of the best strategies that I've been in this industry for over 10 years, and I've never seen some of the things that you've specifically talk about: sales, persuasion, influence, strategy. So for a lot of my viewers are entrepreneurs, business owners, and for those of you who have never heard of Eli before, do you want to tell just a very 2 minutes who you are, what you do, and where you've come from?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. Background started, I was an actor for a bit living in Los Angeles, and like a lot of people, things weren't going that well, and you're kind of a starving artist. And I did sales on the phone for a dental company selling dental products over the phone. And even for myself, I noticed that sometimes people didn't buy, and I got really frustrated. And having an acting background, you would video yourself, you would look at scripts, and I would start to play with language. Why did certain things land? Or I'm talking too fast, and I would go back through that process, or I didn't articulate certain language really well, or didn't ask the right question. I would go back, and I was really frustrated. And I started reading a lot of books in self-development and got a hold of Tony stuff and NLP, and then really mastering the language, and it became really fun to play with this stuff. Long story short, I ended up going to a Tony Robbins event, and what he was doing on stage, I had some understanding of the stage performance, the presence, the questions, the interaction, the engagement. And this guy, is thousands of people, and he just moved them emotionally. And one of the things he talked about as far as influencing ourselves, influence others, it's the emotions that drive people. And if we can drive into the emotions with our language, with our focus and the meaning that we attach to the circumstance or the conversation, we can compel people to take action. And that's why there's people jumping up and down and this energy and everything. And I was just mesmerized. And so after that, I harassed the company till I got a job. And I called them about 200 times because Tony was like, if you want something bad enough, you do whatever it takes. There's this ultimate success formula. So I applied all that stuff to actually get the job with Tony. And within about a year, I was one of the top people in the company. And so Tony's son wanted to join the company and became my roommate, and then his brother-in-law, and did really, really well. And so Tony had heard about me. And, long story short, I don't want to make this too long, but I got to engage with Tony quite a bit, learn a lot, and do these previews. And after about a decade, I was by far the most successful person in the company doing this. And some cycles I would outsell the rest of the team myself. My sales up to 5 times higher than everybody else on average. But I was really into it, mastering the language, the communication. And it's interesting now that I've taken a step back, and because I was a top person for Tony, this industry of coaching, consulting, service providers, people using the internet, Facebook to market their services, draw clients in, and then close them. Because of my success there, so many people have asked me, like, what's the process? And I have to say that, we would go out. I was at your event yesterday, and it's awesome. And I go to these events, Success Resources, and people are always trying to get the numbers up in sales. It's fascinating to me because I think it's so much easier than what we do. I'm actually doing a training for Tony's entire company, the sales team, next Monday, so a week from now, after they do UPW in Florida. And when somebody comes to an event, they're like, they want what you have. We would typically go to offices, companies, insurance, real estate, sales-based organizations. And because it's sales-based, first of all, I couldn't do all the typical sales stuff that everybody else was doing because they've already been taught that, and they're just like, okay, here it comes. So I had to be unique and different. I had to engage people in a different way where they're like, there's something different about this. So automatically I had to think differently and use a different frame. And I would do these presentations, but sometimes it was car lots. It was people that didn't want to hear what I had to say, knew I was there to sell something, didn't care about motivation, didn't care about Tony Robbins. So they were like non-buyers. And we had to turn them into buyers, and I'd have about 45 minutes initially to get people to commit, thousands of dollars of their income that they didn't have, 4 days of their life, and flights and hotel and all of that. And I've only got a little bit of time to do it. So you had to make a really strong impact. And the beautiful thing was we would speak a couple times a day, and so got to have a lot of reps. And what I love about sales is, because we were like motivational speakers is how they would market us, but I think most audiences are pretty darn nice, and people will clap. Even if you do like an okay job and you're
Yeah.
really like trying and you're struggling and you're a new speaker, people are like, yeah, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you got it. But at the end of the day, people ultimately vote with their dollars.
Yeah.
And in sales, you find out if you're good, not by people saying, oh, you did a really good job. But if they don't buy, you actually kind of suck.
Yeah.
And something's not working. And so you get to have a lot of feedback. And as we say, you know, one of the tenets of our communication is there's no failure, there's only feedback. But with some of the people that I've coached, I'm like, hey, there's no failure, there's only feedback. But you got a big pile of freaking feedback here. Like, let's start looking at some of this. It's called no sales.
Right.
And so let's figure out like what's working, what's not, how do we engage people differently on a different level, really connect with their emotions through our communication, our physiology, you know, touching them, whatever it is to get people more involved in what we're doing. And I've been really blessed to have some direct mentorship from Tony, where I got to ask him or his brother-in-law, Scott, and, you know, this is what I'm doing. Is it working? What do you think? And they would completely just reframe my brain on like how to think about the problems and why they were, and the lack of engagement, things within myself, my own insecurities, doubts, fears, and some of these processes have now streamlined, and we've made them part of a sales training that really helps people.
So you talk about sales and influence.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, you know, we just had coffee now before
Yeah.
this interview, and you were talking about how can two people have the same training, but yet one person gets 10 times more sales than the other person, but yet they've had the same training.
Yeah.
Why is that?
You know, that's kind of been like the thing. And for me, it's like when I worked with Tony initially, there was about a dozen of us that would go out. We had the same product, same price point, talked to the same type of people, had the same event, same everything. But I noticed some people were better than others and they had got better results. A lot of it's what's happening internally. And the way that I teach this sales and influence is there's 4 levels to it. And the first level is how you influence yourself. Second is how you influence one-to-one. And then there's one-to-many, a group. If you're teaching a seminar, if you own a company, it's a different level of communication. And then the 4th level is when you influence and you're not there. Best example, I think, you know, in business today is Steve Jobs. We use his stuff,
Right.
but he's not here. But his character, his presence, his values are so infused in that organization and in the people that the message lives on. And if you're a company owner, if you're a family person, you want to be able to go away and have things not fall apart. And so how do you instill that? And so that's the highest level, but as we say, the height of the pinnacle is based upon the strength of the foundation. And the foundation for your communication and influence in sales is always within yourself. And so it's really looking within ourselves, like sales is being this transference of energy, emotion, everything's energy, and I can't give you something that I don't have. I can't give you $1 if I don't have it. And what really makes somebody powerful in sales and influence is certainty. And I can't give you certainty in this product, in this opportunity, and what I'm saying that this is going to help your life unless I feel certainty within myself. I can't give you the certainty unless I have it. And so when certain people speak, they speak to an audience, they talk to somebody, and they contract. Their certainty kind of shrinks, especially when you interact with somebody or you ask them for the sale or you put something out there and they're not like yes, they're kind of like no or screw you or whatever. And as they get negative, that sends a message to the nervous system of the sales rep, and they react instead of respond. They see somebody says no or I got to think about it. I can give that salesperson exactly the right words to say, but because of the meaning that they've attached to the objection, what it's done to their focus and what it's done to their physiology, they contract, and now they might say the right words, but they say them too quick, or they say them with a little bit of frustration or anger. They don't have the pause and the presence, and they lose the connection with the person. And so if you're going to connect with an individual on the phone, or if you're going to connect with a group of people, like when you see Tony shifting the audience for thousands of people like you're about to do on, with Gary Vee and all these people, you have to have this presence and this connection. You have to connect. I believe, a lot of it, there is a relationship you have with the brand or the company that you build this trust with. And so people need to be connected to, I think, within themselves. First, the sense of higher purpose and meaning, like why are you actually here? Because motive does matter. And if you're just trying to sell somebody, it's different. But if you know that you're here and you've got this big vision for how you help people, you've got to be connected to that, connected to your own certainty, and then connected to that person. Most people are, even if they're trying to get rapport, that's why when I teach sales, part of the internal work, I teach that rapport is important, but it's the 4th most important thing. When you engage with somebody, the first thing is always your own belief system. And like I said, when I would do these talks for Tony, I would go in these offices, they had a belief system about me, about why they're there. They had a belief, I don't need to be there. I don't want to buy anything. I don't need to hear what you have to say. And I walked in and I had a belief system. And when two people meet, the person that is more certain will influence the other person. And so I had this mantra in my mind, my certainty overcomes their doubt. Because they were certain they did not need to be there, not need to hear what I say. And somebody might be like, I've already heard this, I already know everything, and I don't need to hear what you say. And my belief was, this person really needs to hear what I have to say. Like this certainty, like, and I would do it being playful, being warm. And when two people meet, also the person that is not only more certain, but is more flexible. And so I would learn different things and how to engage, and I was willing to try new things in the moment. And so that level of behavioral flexibility, sensory acuity, acute sensitivity to understand, hey, this isn't working. I'm going to change my approach. Like I could see. And all of that comes from not being in your head. As we say, when you're in your head, you're dead. And when you become self-conscious, you're conscious of yourself and how you look and how you sound, and they're not responding the right way, and you're kind of like this self-judgment and this, or this persona fatigue, you're trying to be like somebody else, and you kind of shrink a little bit. But when you're out of your head and you're connected to that person, you can notice their eye contact and their breathing, and you can engage with somebody, and you have no internal dialogue, you're fully connected. And that comes from a lot of preparation, a lot of certainty, a lot of meaning. And when you can transfer that and people screw with you or they fuck with you and they kind of mess with you a little bit, but you're still like even expanding more, I say it's physics, because like the way I explain it is, if you had the moon here and the earth here, if the earth shrunk, the moon would get further away because of gravitational pull. But if the earth expanded, the moon would get closer. And so these people come into your gravitational pull of your brand or your market, and so they're going to test you, like screw you, whatever. But if you expand, and what they're saying is they're not certain, and you show up with even more certainty and love and compassion and connection and belief in who you are and what you have, you expand even more. When they're throwing things at you, they can't help but to be pulled into that. It's gravity. And most people don't get that. They start shrinking, and then they start chasing. Well, have you thought about this? And I need to sell you this, or I'll discount it. And the person's certainty just goes away. And so we need to expand into that, and that comes from lots of training. And so a lot of the training that we do for people is a lot on their mindset, getting them really associated to what this actually is, this exchange of value, this energy exchange between people, and what you're actually communicating to this people, so they feel touched, moved, and inspired to take action. And they don't feel sold, they feel enrolled. They feel enrolled in a vision that you've shared with them, and a vision for what their life could look like. And so it's not about just pitching a product or a service, it's enrolling people in an opportunity and a new identity. We talked a bit about this yesterday at your event, like to be a speaker, to be an entrepreneur, to be a millionaire. There's an identity, and giving them the opportunity to step into that. And so that's a lot what it looks like on the inside, but it's really just about having your certainty so strong that it overcomes their doubt. And then at the advanced level, we ask questions to actually increase their doubt. And so as I said, there's like the earth and the moon, and so they might show up with like a lot of certainty. And so I might ask them questions where I kind of shrink their certainty. And so through skilled questions, we can engage people's focus, meaning, language. We can change how they show up in the moment.
Could you give an example of that?
Yeah, so I could ask somebody, it's like, for you, you're a smart guy. I say, John, you're a really smart guy. You've done all this, but can I ask you a question? Permission?
Yeah.
Have you ever been wrong before?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, how do you know that what you're doing is exactly the right thing right now?
You don't.
You just don't.
Right.
So what you're saying is there could be a better way to do it that you're not even aware of.
Correct.
Yeah. So now, so somebody could be really certain, like what I'm doing is the best, I don't need to hear anything, but through asking questions, like the example we give sometimes, I could ask somebody, like ask a woman, like, do you think you're sexy? And she'd be like, yeah, I'm sexy. Well, how do you know? Because, well, people always tell me I'm sexy. Men tell me I'm sexy. Well, have men ever lied to you before? Well, yeah. Well, how do you know that you're just not making this up? Well, I guess I don't. And so people start to doubt that what they're doing is the best thing. And so sometimes as we do that, it releases their hold that they have on this is the only way. And we at least sometimes, before we present our opportunity, we need to get people associated to, hey, maybe this isn't the best way. Maybe things have changed, the frame of new versus old, because what worked 10 years ago probably isn't working today in ads. Would you agree with that?
I agree, yeah.
And so the question becomes, now put question in somebody's mind, what's next and what's working now? And really looking at your processes and knowing that what worked yesterday probably doesn't work as good today. And so in order for you to stay ahead of your market, you do want to stay ahead of the market, yeah?
Yeah.
In order for you to do that, it's best to be really adept into what's working now best for your company. True?
Yeah.
And so asking questions like that can open people up to your presentation and your offer. And so as we were talking yesterday, we don't make offers or even give presentations unless they're asked for. So the principle is not to be a product pusher, but to be a problem finder and a problem solver. And so we're asking questions about people's situation, doing a lot of discovery. And in that, as people begin to talk about their situation, their problems, their impact, the impact of those problems, the consequences, their dreams, they start opening up a lot. And you want to get them talking a lot. And through questions, sometimes, as you were saying, some people will start rambling about the wrong thing. We'll say, well, when you said this, what do you mean by that? Because here's the thing. And if I could ask about that specifically. So sometimes we'll interject and redirect people's focus with questions. I could ask about your shoes or what you ate this morning, whatever it is, and your mind has to go there. And so I have a clear idea in my mind already of where I want somebody, their mind and emotions to go. And if I can lead their thoughts and feelings in a certain direction, that's what leads to action.
Right.
And so on a sales call, you want somebody to take the action of buying, but all actions are preceded by thoughts and feelings. So I'm like, hey, have you thought about this? How would it make you feel if your business didn't grow this year? And so I'm directing them with my thoughts and feelings, and if I can get them associated and talking about their problems and the impact of them, they'll be more open to buy. And if I've created connection and empathy with my tonality, my questions, the way they've landed, and if they've challenged me and I've not reacted or tried to talk over them, no problem. Well, here's what's great. And would you be open to looking at that another way? And creating connection there and providing perspective, it really opens people up. And the way that we teach sales that's a little bit different is, there was this book written in 2009 maybe, called The Challenger Sale, that really opened up my world, because they looked at the different types of salespeople, the psychological profiles. There was like the lone wolf type person, there's these different guys, relationship builder. And after 2008, the economy crashed, all people's sales went down, except for one psychological profile. Their sales actually went up.
Right.
And it was the people called these challengers. And so they challenged their prospect to think differently about the economy, about the market, about the future of their business. And through the conversation, they weren't just an order taker. Like, hey, do you want some more product? Hey, we can help you. Because that was annoying to the prospect who's already stressed it. It's like, hey, what you're doing is not working. And here's what we know it is working now, especially right now. You need to hear this. Listen up. And challenge their thinking. And people are like, man, this conversation was so valuable. You got to look at me, my business, how I'm showing up so much differently. Like, I want to talk to you again. So yeah, and here's what you need to do. You need to buy this. Oh, and they were just like, okay. So they challenge people, which takes a lot of certainty, a lot of industry knowledge. You can't just be reading from a script. And so that level of training in the mindset to really show up powerfully like that is part of what we teach that's different.
We were having a conversation over the dinner yesterday, and that's what I love about your approach. Your approach is, a lot of the sales trainers out there will teach you have to say this and you have to this script, and people almost sound like a robot. Like, when you get those calls and people are reading off a script.
Yeah.
And what I love about your approach is it's very fluid. Like you mentioned before, it's about being flexible.
Yeah.
It's about being that sensory acuity, knowing what's happening, to get that understanding of, am I going the right way? Am I going the wrong way?
Yeah.
And so, but how does someone who has no experience in sales develop that?
I think it's good sometimes to have a script as a foundation, but people will read words and they don't know why they're saying what they're saying. And so that takes some experience, but it takes people playing with them and feeding things back and just messing with them a bit, and it kind of scrambles our mind, and then we get better understanding. So a lot of feedback and a lot of review, that's the training. And saying, hey, you sound like a freaking robot here. You're not connected. Your tonality is really monotone. You don't sound like you're connected. Words aren't landing. It's just you're kind of like, you sound weak, or you sound like overbearing. Like somebody to give them a lot of feedback. That's what it takes. But the words are super important. But as through NLP, they talk about, it's about 7% of communication, about 38% is tonality, and then 55% is our body language. And even if you're sitting on the phone or if you're smiling, this is all body language. If you're hydrated or not, like how you actually feel sends a huge message. And so it's a lot of conditioning.
Even if they can't see you.
Yeah, it's huge. And so that's why most salespeople sit down all day. I'm like, you need to stand up more, you need to stay hydrated, all of that. It is hugely important because people, they can feel you through the call. And so you've really got to master that.
If you were to go back 10 years and speak to the 10-year younger Eli Wild, in sales, what advice would you give to the younger version of you in sales?
You know, we had a script that we were using, and I was doing it, and I had an acting background, so I would perform it. But as you were even saying yesterday, you could be, you know, in order to be interesting, you need to be interested. So I was really interested in my own performance and how I sounded, and I could flow, and I was certain, and I would do these things, and I would wow the audience, and I would come in like boom, you know, and it was like, wow, people will clap, but I didn't have the connection. And so really understanding why people do what they do, and even when I would look at a script now, I'm like, why am I saying this? And when I say this, what impact is it having? And you know, for me, my background, getting into sales, it was more like acting, but really when I went into Tony's work or any of the self-development work, I was really, and I think most therapists, most coaches, their first client is always themselves, and they're like coaching people in what they do, but they're really like, why do I do these dumb things? And I was just fascinated with people. Early on, I was fascinated more with myself, and it was out of my own insecurity. So I'd go back and I'd do a lot more work on myself initially and understand why I was doing the things that I was doing. And that's where Robin's work really helped me. He talks about these 6 human needs: certainty, you know, a sense of safety, adventure or uncertainty, connection, significance, feeling important, and then growth and contribution. So it drives people. And in the sales process, you know, when you do marketing out there, you grab people's attention. It's like something's new. It's like an adventure. Here's a new idea, a new product. I could have this thing, so it's some excitement there. But it's interesting, as you actually pull people into the sales process, that must switch more to certainty. And so as we pull people from just their attention, this is something new, to grab them, and then as we pull them through the sales conversation, what we want to do is increase their certainty. And so as people move in from the initial stage of the conversation to the close, we need to increase their certainty, and that's when they're most uncertain. And what they're saying, if somebody says they're not buying something, they're saying they're not certain about you because of how you've shown up. They're not certain about your product. They're not certain about your company, but mostly they're not certain about themselves. And so it's reinforcing for them and making them feel absolutely certain. And we do that with what we have them focus on. We do that with our language, the meaning that they have about money or time, so we can reframe all that and make them feel a new feeling. But some of the questions I'm asking are directing their focus in a certain way, and then providing answers with language that make them feel certain. So as I describe a program, I'm going to say things like, well, this is going to build a foundation for you. You know, right now you're here, and so we need to build a foundation for you for a 6-figure business. And that's going to give you predictability and provide certainty in your income that you get $15,000, $20,000 on autopilot. Does that sound like something you want? And they're like, yeah. So I'm saying over and over again, predictability, foundation, these are different words for certainty. This is going to be solid. And right now, even though you're making $5,000 a month, we want your brand presence to make you look like an 8-figure company, you know, because that's what's going to attract people to you because they see that you're successful. And they're like, that sounds awesome. So what I'm saying there is you're going to look significant. People, your status, people in your high school and people, you know, in your family are going to see that you look amazing. And people, that's what drives people. It's not just the money. They want to feel important. Mm-hmm. And so we say that 80% of the world, there's your 6 human needs, and the top 2 are what's called your driving force. So we all want love and we all want connection, but what really gets people to make decisions, usually they make them out of certainty because they're scared, or they want to be significant. They want to feel special. And so I'm explaining my offer. It says, hey, this will make you more certain. This will make people have certainty in you. And this will make you seem more special and stand out. Is that what you want? They're like, yeah. And so if I position my offer in a way that provides their needs, not just their wants, but their true needs, their need to feel special, their need to feel safe as they move, I do that with my language, and they're like, this feels right. And then I'm like, where do you want to go? They're like, well, let's do it. And so there's a lot that we're doing with their focus and their language, but I think if I could go back, I'd be less focused on myself and how I was looking or sounding, and just more connected to more people and ask them lots of questions. something I did that was really good, many years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, I started asking people that bought, at what point in my presentation did you decide you were going to buy? At what point in our conversation did you feel like this was going to make it happen for you? And usually it happened way sooner than I thought. They're like, you said this thing, and I just knew that I had to do it. So I refined all those moments, and then my presentation became full of all just those moments. And so it was it was all these magic moments. And I thought sometimes it was things that I said, but sometimes it was the way I said something, and then giving space and letting those emotions and those connections happen within the person. And as we say, it's the music, it's the space between the notes that makes the music. And so really letting people process and not being about me and performing, but really being aware of what's happening inside of somebody's nervous system. And if they're not engaged with me, if they're distracted, doing something to pull them back in. And most of our decisions that we make, from the time we brush our teeth and get up in the morning to the time we go to bed, most of our decisions are unconscious. And I started to learn a lot more about how to access people's unconscious decisions and how they're unconscious thinking through conditioning, through reps, through emotion, through them saying things, and pacing and leading them to a new outcome. And so that's some of the NLP stuff, some of the hypnosis stuff that I geek out on. I think that stuff is more just icing on the cake. And I started there wondering, what do I say and what are these fancy things? And then I got lost in techniques and tactics. And then I got back into true connection and understanding of human beings. And now I've layered the icing on the cake back on with language and all the fancy stuff. And I geek out on it, but really it's just connection. It's just certainty. And I think I would have doubled down on that initially.
Wow. So you spend a lot of time with Tony Robbins. What's the biggest lesson you've learned from Tony over the last many years?
It's interesting. And it was so great hearing you and Vincent talk yesterday about some of your experiences and advice. For me, I live with Tony's son, Jarek, for a couple of years, and he would, Tony would send these audio messages. He sends like these audio messages when he communicates. And I remember his son wanted to be like on the big stage and speak and all these things. And he wanted to do like all this great stuff. But we were all like absorbing Tony stuff and books and had all this knowledge. And as we were taking action, but not really taking action. We were more just like accumulating information as opposed to implementing and having our own experiences. We were learning from the experiences of others, which is still powerful, but not taking massive action. And Tony said this to us. He says, you can get smart from another person's knowledge, but you will never become wise from another person's wisdom.
What does that mean?
It means that you can accumulate all this knowledge and become very smart, but wisdom takes experience. Wisdom, you have an experience where you put yourself out there and then you gain insight and awareness and this wisdom. And there's a lot of very smart people. Like been living in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills for a long time. And there's people that have PhD and all these letters behind their name and certificates and degrees, but they're not doing anything. They're not actually making an impact. And there's some people who have no education, but they have lots of wisdom because they've taken lots of action and lots of experience. And that's where you can get it. So being smart, we want to seem smart and talk well and all that. But when you've got wisdom, it comes from having the experience and being in the game. And he was like, just get yourself out there and be in the game.